When I started my career, I thought there is only one thing I could do. So I started my career as a software engineer, and the only path that I thought was possible for me was software engineering. So I grew my career into software engineer, eventually staff engineer, and then I went into management and leadership. But what if I tell you that actually there is more than one option? And if you feel stuck, if you feel like maybe the path you're on right now is not the right path for you, don't wait over 20 years like I did in order to make a change. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of From a Woman to a Leader. And this podcast, for those of you who don't know, is dedicated for you, women in tech. I'm here to support you, empower you, and I'm interviewing wonderful guests that are all successful women. Some of them are entrepreneurs, some of them are holding high positions in different companies, and we're here for you to share their stories, to share their tips and insights for you and to help you. And for those of you who don't know me, so first of all, welcome, and thank you so much for listening to this episode. My name is Limor Bergman-Gross, and I have been in tech until 5 years ago throughout my career, and I started as a software engineer and grew eventually into leadership. And 5 years ago, I decided to change that path and support other women. So today I'm coaching other women leaders and helping them grow and succeed in their careers. And there is one thing that I learned is that there is more than one option for you in your career. And that's why I'm super excited to introduce the guest that I'm speaking with today. Her name is Gabriela Schwartz-Porto, and actually I met her in Vienna in September. Both of us went to the beautiful Vienna City Hall for a conference organized by the Female Factor, an organization where I mentor pro bono different women in tech. And Gabriela and I really connected there, and we decided that we need to record this episode. I think her story is very, very interesting. First of all, the company she worked for, Flo Health, incredible company. It's a company that is dedicated to women's health, and they have an app. Actually, my daughters are using their app. They have, I think, over 300 million users already. And Gabriela is working there, and she actually switched into tech. She was a lawyer, and she switched into the world of compliance. And this episode, we're talking about the switch that she made from working as a lawyer to being, in high-pace environment, tech environment, working on compliance and making legal and compliance accessible. And we talk about working and collaborating with different departments, how she made the switch. And also we're talking about balancing her motherhood and her career. So I definitely think this episode is going to give you a lot of insights and open your minds to possibilities. She, one of the things she told me in the episode was that actually lawyers are not boring. Lawyers also are fun people. So we want to hang out, we want to go for coffee and drinks. So for those of you who want to be inspired, or maybe you are feeling stuck and you feel like you have no option to move forward, I want to invite you to this episode to listen to me and Gabriela. I think that's going to help you. So are you ready? Let's dive right in. Hi, Gabriela. How are you?
Doing very good. And you, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. And I'm so happy to have you here.
Yes, we actually met in Vienna 2 months ago.
2 months,
yeah. So I'm actually very excited to be here too.
Yeah, and I'm very excited as well. And looking forward to our conversation. And maybe, Gabriela, we'll start maybe by you sharing a little bit about what you do. I love the company you work for, Flo Health, and what they do. I think we need more companies focusing on women's health. So definitely,
Yeah.
I'm very excited about that.
100%. I love working for Flo because it's so interesting when you work for a company that you actually use the product and you love the product. And I was a user of Flo before I joined the company. But anyway, I'll give you a bit of a background. So I'm Brazilian and a lawyer by background. And right now I'm based in Amsterdam. But in between, I used to live in Portugal where I did my master's degree. I fell in love with the country when I did a kind of like Erasmus program during college. Fell in love, and I promised myself that I would go back there as soon as I had a chance.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back to Brazil, finished my studies, did what I had to do, passed the bar, all of that. When I had a chance, I went back to Portugal and started my master's degree there. I stayed there for 2 years and then I moved to the Netherlands where I started my career in tech specifically. Before that, I worked for the governmental departments or law firms, but in tech was the first time that I had a chance to be included in this chaotic and amazing world. And I've been here since. So after I moved to the Netherlands, I started working in a small startup based in Amsterdam. It was a medical devices startup. We were doing online eye exam, which is also very interesting. I stayed there for 2 years and then I started working for Flo as a compliance manager. I'm now the head of the department. We have a very nice and big legal and compliance department in which my team is part of. Sometimes I refer to Flo as a startup, but actually Flo is a big scale up. We are about 500 people. Flo's headquarters is in London. I'm based in Amsterdam, but we have people everywhere. My team is in Amsterdam and in Lithuania. So it's quite interesting to work with people from so many different places. For those who don't know, is known as a period tracker company, but Flow is so much more than that. We try to focus on the whole journey of womanhood. So from teens to tracking your cycle, then helping women they're going through their conception journey, then their pregnancy, and now we are entering the perimenopause role. So we really covered it all. And as I said in the beginning, it's really interesting to work for a company that you love as a product. So you use, when I was trying to get pregnant, I used it, and I've been using the period tracker feature as well for many, many years.
Absolutely. And as I said, I love your product. I'm not using it myself so much because I'm in the premenopause phase, but both my daughters are using it and they love it.
I'm really glad. I love when I go somewhere and I have, I don't know, the backpack or the hoodie with Flo's logo and people say, "Ah, you work for Flo. I love that product." And like it's so rewarding to hear that.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful product. And I recommend all the women out there, if you're not familiar with Flow, check it out. They have like a pinkish kind of
Yeah,
a
feather
logo.
logo. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely check it out. And so, Gabrielle, you mentioned so many interesting things. Let's start maybe with your transition from like legal into tech, and
Yeah.
kind of what inspired you to do that.
To be very honest, I think nothing inspired me. I just landed there. It
Uh
was
huh.
like by luck. I'm very grateful for the experience because I was very frustrated professionally for a long time. I didn't think that being a lawyer was something that I wanted to be. And I guess what was wrong is that I was in the wrong environment. So when I moved to the Netherlands and I restarted in a different country, my experience was so good. I think I was working for such a nice company and I was surrounded by amazing people. I made so many good friends in that company. And I think the profile of a startup quite matched my profile. So I finally saw myself happy as a legal counsel. So as I said, this transition was a bit by luck, I have to say, but I'm staying by choice.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And for the women out there that maybe are considering something similar, like they have maybe traditional law degree and maybe they're practicing law, and they think, oh, maybe that's not the right thing for me. What should they do to figure out if like working in tech is the right thing for them?
It's a very good question. I think there are a couple of like soft skills that I find very important. And when I hire for my own team, these are the kind of skills that I really pay attention to. To me, they are even more important than the hard skills that you bring. When you work in tech, it's really crazy how fast-paced it is. So you really need to be able to multitask. When you work for a company, for example, the size of Flo, you have dozens of product managers, and you are just like four legal and compliance counsels. So each of us is handling like 10, 15 projects at once. So you should be able to manage and prioritize of that project. So actually project management is a good skill to develop if you want to get into tech. And you should also be able to foster relationships with other teams. I think something that was very new to me when I started is that how much is expected of you outside of your legal knowledge. As a compliance counsel in a tech company, you should know a bit about product management, product design, marketing, everything, because people expect you to give a very actionable advice. You're not expected to come back with a, I don't know, 10-page memo with a bunch of legal principles and legal requirements that nobody understands. They really need help translating that legal requirements into product requirements and how those legal requirements will perhaps affect the product, the release and the end product. So you should be able to leave aside the legalese and all of the bureaucracy that we were trained to do in a sense, and help those product teams create something compliant. So you really need to foster that relationship between the business units. So you should be good at that. Emotional intelligence. And I think one thing that is definitely underrated is curiosity. You should be a curious person. You should be curious about what other people do. You should be curious about how they see the product from their lens. You should be curious about, as I said, product management, user acquisition, growth marketing, everything, because they expect you to know a bit about their processes in order to properly advise them on what to do. So I
For
guess
sure.
that's it. Yeah.
So it's I hear a lot of curiosity, being willing to learn, to work with different people from different departments, and to make, I would say, make legal accessible.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Yeah, it's very funny because throughout my life, I've always heard those jokes like nobody's friends with the lawyers, or the lawyers are on one side and they're not fun. I don't know, those kind of jokes, and it might be true. So I'm not negating people's experience with their own legal and compliance counsels, but that doesn't have to be true. And I think what you said is it's completely accurate. We need to make compliance accessible to everyone. And we lawyers sometimes we tend to use that word common sense. We believe that everything is common sense. People know about that. It's common sense, but they don't. And it's your job to help them understand and translate those requirements into easy to understand actions. So you're fully right.
Yeah, and I know that somehow it seems a lot of time contradicting to have, to work in compliance and legal towards the tech world, because tech is moving so quickly.
Yeah.
And also taking risks is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Well, usually, like, as far as I know, right? I mean, someone legal, they just want to be very protective and think about like being conservative. So how do you balance the two worlds?
Oh my God, that's such a good question. You're fully right. I think we are risk averse by design. Like lawyers, we are trained to be risk averse at what we do. So that when we start working in tech, this is a big surprise because perhaps the risk profile of a company does not match your initial risk averseness.
Yeah.
So it's very complicated. But what I like to tell people is companies must take risks. If they don't take risks, they don't develop, they don't grow. And it's our job to advise the business about what kind of risks that they should be taking or they shouldn't be taking, or what they should be doing about it. What I'm going to say now may seem silly to bigger and more mature companies, but when we talk about early stages, startup or scale ups, this is very true. it's very hard to find a company that has a defined risk profile, that has like a risk strategy in place, that has, for example, a defined risk appetite. And what I mean by risk appetite is that that willingness to take risks in pursuit of value. That could be revenue, for example. So it really makes our lives easier as legal counsels when you help the business establish that risk strategy to start with, to define that risk appetite, because it's not our job to tell the business what kind of risks they should be taking. It's their job to define how much risks they as a company, based on their cultures, based on their lives, on their industry, they're willing to take. And it's our job to help them understand how the risks that we have identified can compare to that risk appetite that they had defined for themselves. So what I tell people normally is, go back to the business. You're not supposed to say yes or no, because you're not a decision maker here. Go back to the business, show them, and make this conversation very visual. This is not a report. It's like a visual conversation. Make that very visual. Show them how the risks that we have identified compare to their risk appetite. Is it above the threshold? Is it below the threshold? Help them understand what they would need to do to bring this risks level down to an acceptable level, and also help them understand what are the consequences as well. So your job is to help them make an informed decision, is not to say yes or no. And I think that risk-based mindset is something that you must have when you work in tech, because otherwise you're going to go crazy. You're going to realize that people take way more risks than that you as a lawyer would be willing to take yourself. Like you can't say like, if I were the CEO, I would have done that. Of course, that's why you're not the CEO. That's why lawyers are not good CEOs, because we don't take risks. And he or she must take risks to help the company grow. But you can help them understand how to better manage that risks and make an informed decision. There was a lot of talk about risks. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So it's just about the company deciding what's the level of risk they're willing to take and strategize around it, rather than every time like try to reinvent the wheel. So trying to really make thoughtful decisions about what's the level of risk, because there is always risk, right? I mean, nothing is bulletproof. The company is willing to take, and the legal point of view is about translating, the specific circumstances and showing, hey, those are the risk factors, how they are compared to the threshold that the company defined, and eventually give all the information to the leaders to make decisions.
Exactly. So for example, when we work with product managers, let's say that they want to develop something new, a new product or a new feature, and we as compliance counsels, we are responsible for identifying those potential risks. So then we go back to them and say, look, this is what you want to do. These are the red flags that we have identified. How can we work together to address those red flags by design from the beginning? Because what happens, and it goes back a bit to the question that you asked before, what happens is that very often they don't want to include us in the conversation because they are afraid of this risk talk, and then they develop whatever they are developing, and they need to send it to legal for sign off, and then they send it to legal for sign off at the end, and we're going to say, oh my God, you can't do that. So it becomes like this vicious circle that they don't include us because they believe we are going to say no to something, and then they develop, and then we say no to something at the end because they didn't include us in the beginning. So this idea of having a risk strategy also helps with that conversation, because risk management becomes everybody's responsibility. So it's not just the legal or the compliance counsel responsibility, it's also the PM responsibility to address the risks of whatever product she's building.
Yes, I'm hearing here is about it should be a collaboration, and everyone owns it, and also maybe about like legal's role about not necessarily making the decision or telling someone what to do, rather than just sharing what's the risk level
Yeah,
and how it is compared to what the company defined.
yeah, exactly. I think especially for product managers, they're already used to gathering product requirements from it before they start working on something. What people need to understand that legal and compliance requirements should also be included in that moment. We need to help them understand that. So it's our job to bring awareness and education and provide training to the company, for example. It's also our job to make sure that we are not sending them a list of very vague principles that they don't know what to do with it. So we need to work together on that. And they need to understand that they must include the legal and compliance department as well from the beginning. And honestly, this is a very lengthy process. This kind of relationship you don't build in like a sprint. You need to work together a long time, adjust as a build a collaborative process together, try to meet in the middle. And I think also a big mistake that compliance councils do as well is not having that curiosity to understanding the product manager's own processes and tools. So it's way easier to collaborate when we are using the same tools and using the same processes. So for instance, we're not going to send them an email with the product requirements. They don't use that. So what is that they are using? Is like a Miro board, is a Figma file. What is that? What is the tool that they use to work? We're going to use that. It's fine. So you want a Miro board? We're going to put all of our compliance requirements in your own Miro board. So we make sure that compliance as well as UX research, as well as design, as marketing, we all have our requirements and our view. So we are all like stakeholders and working towards the same goal, which is releasing the best in class product, right?
For sure. So kind of you're talking about having compliance as a first class citizen and being part of the culture, working together with product
Yeah,
as other departments and not an afterthought.
exactly, exactly. I feel that this relationship between the compliance department and the other business units is so important, as we just discussed on the product
Yeah.
development side, but also on the governance side, because we're also responsible as a compliance team to safeguard our processes and our policies in a company. So we want people to trust us because we want them to speak up. So the worst that can happen in a company is this lack of trust between the business and their compliance, legal, and human resources department. Because if there is a problem, they don't feel comfortable with speaking up. So we need to foster this relationship and to show that they can trust us. We are all working towards the same goal as a company. So yeah, not lawyers there. We are fun. Invite us for the drinks. We like to drink.
Yeah, I love that. And the question, what is the difference between legal counsel to compliance counsel?
There's no answer for that. It really depends on the company structure.
Okay.
Some companies have different legal and compliance departments. Some companies have just a legal department. It really depends. It depends on the industry, it depends on the size of the company. So I can explain that at Flo, we have a legal and compliance department, and within that department, we have legal counsels, compliance counsels. So we have different responsibilities, but at the end of the day, we are all lawyers by background. But yeah, it really depends on the company. I think this question is quite good in a sense because sometimes people do neglect the compliance side. So they might hire a legal counsel perhaps to deal with the contracts of the company. And here I'm talking again about like a scale up or like a startup. And they forget about the compliance side, so the other processes and also the operational side as well. So if I would give somebody give someone an advice, I would say perhaps get someone that can also help you on the compliance side as well.
Okay. Thank you. And for the women out there that maybe want to consider this transition from maybe traditional law firm or whatever, like traditional practicing law to working in tech, do you have any recommendation of what they should be doing?
I think networking is a good starting point. I think getting to know what that actually entails I'm gonna say that tech is not for everyone. The same way there's a law firm is not for everyone. Working in tech as an in-house counsel is not for everyone. And I would start by asking questions, meeting people, asking questions, understanding what the industry expects of you. And of course, you have different industries with different set of skills. Like I work in healthcare, but you also have fintechs, and you have also education. You also have games. You have everything out there. So different industries would require a different set of skills. So it's good to build your network and ask around. But as I shared in the beginning, I think project management is a good new set of skills that is really worth investing. Let me see what else. Understanding agile methodologies. This is very important. If your background is purely like law firm, you have no idea what I'm talking about. So it's also a good starting point to learn and study a bit about agile methodologies to also help your team as an in-house compliance counsel be more agile as well and perhaps use the same processes as other teams.
Yeah, thank you. Those are incredible tips for all women out there considering that change. So thank you so much. And I want to go to another aspect of your life that you mentioned. Like you moved quite a lot
Love it.
and you love it. And I know your husband love it too.
Yeah.
And you also have a toddler.
Yes. Yes.
So how did you kind of balance it all? Like moving industries, moving countries, raising a family. What's your
I
secret?
know. I don't know. Look, this is so hard. As you said, I love moving around, and I married a guy that also loves moving around. We are now based in the Netherlands, and we have no family around, so it can be quite hard. So I'm Brazilian, as I said. He's French. Our daughter was born in Amsterdam. Our families are everywhere. And we don't have anybody around, so it can be quite lonely and hard to manage a full-time job in parenthood. He also travels for work a lot, so it makes things a bit more complicated. But honestly, I think I'm lucky to work for a company that really fosters a flexible work environment. I know that not everyone is as lucky as I am, so I'm fully aware of my privilege for example, being able to work from home and being able to set my own working hours. So I think if your company is really strict, this is a big red flag. And I would, yeah, perhaps consider other options because I wouldn't make it if it wasn't for the working culture that my own company sets. But that aside, I think I set boundaries. I have some boundaries for myself that I really stick to it. I stop working at 5 because I need to pick up my daughter at daycare. So we have agreements at home that my husband does the drop-offs, so I can start working very early, which by the way is the time that I feel very productive, very early in the morning. And so I start working very early. So then at 5 I can go pick up my daughter at daycare. So my calendar is blocked and people respect that. So it's very rewarding to work with people that understand what you go through as a new mom. And then I think just to keep myself sane, I have a couple of things that I like to do personally, like going to the gym, for instance, or going to a yoga class. These are things that are important to me, and I really try to make time for it. Even if sometimes I have to, I don't know, make dinner at 7:30 in the morning.
Oh my God.
I've got to make some time for my yoga class later that day. Yeah, so I guess that's it. I think a good working environment, a trusted partner, and setting boundaries for yourself.
Sure. Wow. Those are some incredible tips. And I would add that I really think that flexibility is a key here. And I think that for me, there wasn't always flexibility when I used to have very young children because the workforce, I think, was very different
Yeah,
when I started. And it was difficult. I mean, it was not easy. We got a lot of help from grandparents, and then we moved to the US. So we got a lot of
yeah,
babysitters. We hired help, and I felt a lot of guilt for many years. Like,
yeah,
oh, my kids are, being picked by a nanny
yeah,
instead of me. I had to put a lot of sacrifices.
yeah. It's that mom guilt conversation that just us moms understand what we mean by that. We always feel that we can't get it right. And as you said, I think I'm privileged enough to work in a flexible working environment. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't know how I would manage. And this is very sad because a lot of women, especially women, right, they get pushed out of the workforce because they don't have family around to support, or they perhaps don't have the resources to hire extra help, and they don't have a company, and they don't work for a company that allow them to have this flexible routine. So it's quite sad, honestly. I think this is a big, actually, when we talk about compliance and diversity and inclusion in the workplace as well, this is something that is very important to help our women thrive in the workplace, is to also help them be a good mom at home.
Yeah, I think be a good mom, a good partner, and just take care of yourself, like you mentioned, like going to the gym, yoga class, whatever works for you. I mean, whatever does good for you, so you don't lose yourself, right? Because it's like you're a mom, you are a wife, you are working, and then where are you in the picture?
Exactly. And you're working at home as well, right?
I'm working at home from 2016, and I don't plan to change that ever again.
Exactly. To me, this flexibility is also something that it's non-negotiable. So to me, this is more important than anything else. To being able to pick up my daughter at daycare, as you said,
Yeah.
to grow my family, and try to take care of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I will say about the working from home thing. I mean, I know that some people, and I know multiple people that really like going to an office, and that's okay. I mean, I don't think there's one answer, right, to all.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that I love working in my PJ doesn't mean that everyone likes it, and that's
Yeah.
perfectly fine. But I do think the flexibility is the key. When you have a
100%.
flexible environment, it doesn't matter, if you work in an office or not. The flexibility is the thing.
100%. And funny story that when I started working at Flo, it was the mid of COVID. I've been there for about 4 years now, so it was the middle of COVID. And I met my team only in person, I don't know, 9 months after I had started. I had never seen my manager or my team up to that point. The truth is, we work so well together, despite the distance, despite the fact that we don't see each other every day. We are, and part of my job is to create KPIs and SLAs for our team. So I have data to show that, like, how efficient the team is working from home. And as you said, I think people should have a choice to do what is best for them. And I do know a lot of people, as you mentioned, that actually love dressing up and going to work. And that's very valid. Some people actually miss, like my husband, for example, he misses face-to-face conversations and people interactions. So he likes to go to the office. On the other hand, I feel very efficient at home. For example, starting at 7:30 in the morning, 8 in the morning. This is the time that I'm thriving. Imagine if I would have to spend like an hour commuting and missing that sweet spot, So yeah, I wish everybody had the chance to decide what's best for them.
I wish so too.
Yeah.
And with that, I mean, we're coming to an end. So Gabriela, where our listeners can find you, and I'll share the links afterwards, of course.
Yes, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I think you might have my email as well. So if you want to share with them, I'll be happy to. And if there are any women out there that, I don't know, want to know a bit more about tech or compliance, please reach out. I am an introvert, but I do like to go for coffee. So meeting new people, going for coffee or for drinks, because we're fun lawyers, I'm also up for it.
Yeah, I think one thing I will take away from these conversations: lawyers can be fun. They're fun people,
We're fun.
Yeah, they're fun people, and they want to go out for coffee and for drinks.
Exactly. Invite us. We will be there.
Thank you so much, Gabriela. It was a pleasure. And next time I'm in Amsterdam, I'll give you a call.
Please, yes, that would be super fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the episode with Gabriela. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, and you think that's going to be valuable for someone else in your life, please share it. And please subscribe to my podcast to never miss an episode. And before you go, I just want to give you a sneak peek for next week's episode. I'm going to talk with an incredible guest on a topic that, to be honest, I talk quite a lot lately with several guests. And it's about introversion leadership and how can you be a leader while introverted. And this, first of all, it hits home because I'm introverted and I always thought that a leader should be extroverted, very charismatic kind of person. And in fact, that's completely not the only way to lead. And Charissa Dreppen and I talk next week about introversion leadership and how can you be a leader while being introverted, stay true to who you are, and lead with confidence. So stay tuned for next week for this episode. And until then, don't forget to subscribe to my podcast and to my newsletter, limorbergman.com/newsletter. I share weekly tips there, and share it with anyone you think that this episode and this podcast is going to be valuable for. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye.